Hello and welcome to another difficulty check. So, first off, I want to say, I always heard people say, this is a great game, it's challenging and fun and beautiful. Not only were those people correct, they were also right. But yeah, it was very fun. I didn't think I would, it's not that I didn't think I'd like it, I just thought it was going to be a bit overhyped and it was going to be just fine. But I definitely had fun with it for my first few hours that I played. The platforming is really smooth. It's not like some games where the difficulty with the platforming comes from the fact that it's like super janky and hard to use or move sometimes. This one, it's super smooth, and actual difficulty comes from the platforming and not any sort of jankiness. There's obstacles and enemies constantly attacking you, so you have to kind of take on both at the same time. I think I fell into some thorns once, and then after that, the only time I ever did was if I was fighting enemies at the same time as platforming. But I feel like that's a little bit better than just falling into them randomly, because, again, that would just mean the platforming is jank. Now, even though I like the fact that platforming with enemies is hard, I didn't ever really find it that bad when there were no enemies. So I kind of hope later on the platform gets a little bit harder and they don't just rely on the enemies to increase the platforming difficulty. Like, I like the part with I think they're flowers, were shooting some sort of like orb at you. Well, not at you, they were shooting them at certain points on the platforming. So I like that, but if you took those away, there's really not much there. And even that wasn't that bad. So yeah, hopefully the platform gets harder. Another spot where I could say, actually I feel like the platform was kind of hard there. It definitely was, and of course the added enemies was a plus. It was a little water spot with wood sticking up, little tiny wood platforms that you could just barely fit your character on. And there are spiders and the little goopy spiky slime guys. That was a good part, I think. It was challenging, but it wasn't insanely difficult. I didn't find the platform too difficult, and the enemies weren't that bad either. A lot of them telegraphed very hard, and it was pretty easy to figure out what they were going to do before you even fought them the first time. Like, right when you went and fought them the first time, it super easy to tell what they were going to do. There wasn't any surprises that I could think of from enemies. Maybe the big laser beam enemy, which I would say it was probably the hardest enemy, just because I couldn't actually kill it when I ran into it, because I noticed you had to use the explosive ability, and it looked like it'd take like 6 of them to kill it. Now I could do like 3. So I'd say he was the hardest enemy, but there was no enemy that really kind of threw me off at all. And from what I can tell, there's no bosses, which is fine. There doesn't need to be bosses, but I'm not sure how they could make enemies all that difficult with the way the platforming and the attacking works, because the attack is ranged. So you could easily just kind of keep your distance and shoot things. Also, I feel like it kind of hurts the difficulty a little bit when the health plants and the energy plants respawn if you go far enough away. I know enemies do too, but I mean, if you have trouble with some enemies, you can just go backwards to where you didn't have trouble with enemies and go grab any health or energy orbs there, and then come back and try to fight those guys again. Although on hard difficulty, from what I noticed, you can get 1 to 2 shot depending on the enemy. Even at like 6 health orbs, I was getting 2 shot by almost everything. 1 shot by some things. Now my biggest problem with this difficulty is the fact that you can save anywhere. I know there's lots of RPGs where you can do that, but RPGs are so huge that sometimes you can forget to save and you lose like hours of progress. Where this is a shorter game, and it's a platformer, so you can just save right before a big old platforming section, and then just do it, mess up a bunch of times, come back, keep trying, and then finally get past it and save again. Now I know you need energy to save, but again, that's super easy to get because you can just go back to from a place you came where you know it's safe and find an energy or plant. And there you go. You got 3 more saves to use. And more, because the more energy you get, the more you can save. Of course, I know you also need energy for some of your abilities, but you almost always have a save on you. I never felt like if I died, I would lose a lot of progress, unfortunately. I feel like that should be a motivator. It's like, if I die, I could lose a lot of progress. So I need to be very careful, take my time. So yeah, even though hard is a little bit challenging, it doesn't really feel like there's any sort of drawbacks to dying. So, for me at least, I get a little bit of it, but not really like a huge sense of accomplishment whenever I finish an area, because I knew I always had that save to fall back on. And I know there's a 1 life difficulty, but from what I've read, it's on normal and not hard. But also, the fact that you only get 1 life, to me, is more of a challenge run, and not really about the difficulty. So, both of those things, the fact that it's a challenge run, and it's not even on a hard difficulty, I'm not going to count that. Also, you can get upgrades to your character, which I don't think they increase movement or anything like that. Well, actually they do, I'm sure, because they're going to make your character better, like probably higher jumps, things like that. So if I'm not having too much of a problem now, I don't think I'm going to have much of a problem later, once I get all these upgrades to Ori. So I can say I very much like the game. I'll probably beat it at some point, but I don't feel like it's going to scratch that difficult platformer itch for me. But I can say you should definitely give it a try if you're not a masochist, because this one's not going to make you pull your hair out. Thanks for watching this difficulty check for Ori and the Blind Forest.